Hello, my lovelies. How are we doing today? Are you excited for another The Professor's Classroom podcast? It's actually, Ply is busy this week because he is moving. He is moving studios and houses and everything. So, um, to make sure you guys still get your, we'll call it midweek, still technically midweek content, I am going to go live and do my own thing for one more day. Because I want to keep you guys engaged. Though I know my form of content is not quite the same as what you usually get out of Ply Rock Nation. I know it's not as loud, but I still think hopefully you'll find value in what's being said. So with it not being a normal podcast, I decided to do something a little different. I asked people in both mine and Ply's Discord for some topics. I thought, hey, you guys should get involved. Ply Rock Nation, I just want you to know that I am tisking you with my fingers. Tisk. Can't. If you're just listening, you won't see, but I totally did the finger tisk thing. You guys didn't really respond. Didn't bring up any topics or ask any questions. However, people in my Discord did, and so I'm going to use some of this stuff they talked about to generate some discussion. And yeah, also, while we're doing these podcasts, it doesn't have to necessarily be on Spotify. It could be on YouTube, wherever you feel comfortable. But I would love, yeah, we would like some like feedback. Feel free to type in and join the conversation. I know that'll be a little more easily accomplished once we start live streaming on Rumble. I know that will make it easier for you guys to, those who are willing to go over there and watch it, to feel like you're actively part of the conversation. But even now on YouTube, we'd love to have some feedback. It gives us something to talk about in the next podcast, gives us something to discuss and engage with. So just because it's a podcast, don't think that you don't have a part to play in it and you can't be active. As you can tell, I turned off my that horrible eye tracking software that makes you look like a freak, and your eyes are twitching everywhere, and they never look real, and they look like you're in the Matrix. Yeah, I just figured you'd rather watch me look at the monitor and read stuff off of it, and eventually look up at the camera, than stare into your soul with fake doll-like eyes that are twitching every now and then. Kind of settled in on I don't like the eye tracking software just yet. Today we are smoking. Let's see if you guys can see it. There you go. An Alec Bradley Prensado. It's a box pressed Robusto, and it's very nice, very good, highly rated. I believe it's like a 93, 94 rated cigar. So only the finest I bring for you guys. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into the topic that was brought up, and we can kind of chit chat from there. The two people who were most active on my side that kind of brought up ideas I thought were interesting were Morton and Raptor. That's just their screen names. I don't, you know. Morton basically asked a question about why do people experience entertainment, especially live streaming entertainment, was kind of the main focus here. But it kind of applies across other platforms. But why do they experience it so differently? Give me 1 second. Sorry, had to clear the sinuses there. Didn't want you to have to listen to me hawk a loogie and then swallow it deliciously. Yummy breakfast. So instead of making you listen to it, I'll describe it in detail. Uh, it's, so let me give you an example of what we're talking about here. By the way, back to the actual topic at hand. Um, some people like a ply stream, correct? I would believe that most people who are watching this podcast probably are in some way involved with the Ply Rock Nation, but not everybody. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be that way. But it's very chaotic. A lot of noise, a lot of interactivity, a lot of just you know non sequiturs. It's one thing, then another, then another, then another. Then it's no like flow. It's very loud, energetic. 2 hours, hit it hard, and a lot of people like that. But then you get like say someone like Shroud, just for a larger, and he is a much calmer streamer, right? I was a calmer streamer. I wasn't. I mean, I had moments, but I like to have like peaks of excitement, not just like a constant influx. It's kind of how I work. And a lot of people like Stroud. He's obviously very, successful. If you want another big kind of louder streamer, you got like kind of Tim, who yells and screams the entire time he plays, right? So the idea is that there's varying, even though it's all live streaming, there are varying types of live streaming. And people will enjoy or not enjoy the streams differently. And why is that? Why is it to say Ply's like, oh, Shroud just sits there, doesn't say anything? No, I happen to disagree. Like, I think that's an exaggeration because I've been watching Shroud lately while he played Marvel Rivals, and he talks a lot, talks pretty constantly. He's just not loud. He's very calm. He's like, ooh, okay, now we're gonna go over here and use this corner for cover. I want to try to shoot the Thor in the head with my Hela ult or whatever, and oh yeah, no, you should definitely go cover that side. Like he's not that he's quiet, he's just calm, and it's kind of like he's playing the game. He doesn't do a lot of interactivity with the chat. He's not reading a whole lot of chat unless it's between rounds. Whereas you have Ply, who is all about chat interactivity and noise and flashing lights and sound and stimuli. And one person who really likes one would probably not like the other, right? It's an extreme situation where somebody who likes one type of content will not like another. And I want to tie this into kind of Raptor's question because he started asking about how like games impact our minds, impact our mentalities, both good and bad. Like what does playing games do to us? And they both kind of have similar answers. Rather they're related more than similar, I guess. For instance, I would say the answer to the streaming question is pretty simple in that people just have different personalities. They have different quirks and clicks. Like there's introverts and there's extroverts. Extroverts like lots of people and lots of stimuli, and they like it to be like, oh, there's just a lot of coming in. Oh, there's a lot of noise. Oh, there's a lot of attention. I always like to use me and Ply as pretty good examples of how this varies. I would prefer to order food from a restaurant and eat it at my house, where it's nice and peaceful, and I can use the bathroom when I want, and I can just enjoy the food and not have to deal with outside, anything messing with me. Ply literally cannot eat in my house. He has to go out and be amongst the people. He has to be seen while he is eating. He needs people to see him eat. He needs that external stimuli, and he needs a lot of it constantly. He's like an extreme extrovert. I, on the other hand, I'm not an extreme introvert. I think I'm actually what I would consider an extroverted introvert because you're not 100% one or the other all the time. Like most people, Ply, he's pretty far on that extrovert scale, but I obviously don't mind being in front of a camera or having people talk to me. I've taught in front of churches of like a few hundred people. I don't mind being in public spaces. But it does, if I'm around a lot and it's just like kind of like a crowd. Does that make sense? And a lot of constant noise and just like surface level chatter, it wears me out. I need to like go recharge. I would prefer to say sit around a fire or sit around nature with cigars with like 4 or 5 of my friends and discuss like meaningful topics. Or even if you're talking about jokes, just having good jokes that are like really witty and have like a relevance to what we're talking about, and you can kind of like follow the flow. Whereas, I know that like Ply always, when he comes in to Tennessee, when he's up in Knoxville, he'll go to these like thematic bars where they're like, loud, dark with, it's a gaming bar, so you got all kinds of game sounds and music playing, and the drinks are different colors, and all that. And I'm like, that sounds so unpleasant to me. I don't mind going to an arcade every now and then, but it's like the idea of just being stuck in a like noise overstimulated environment where it's just like but in general I don't like, right? That's how bars tend to work, right? It's not just like thematic ones. There's usually music playing and you're yelling over it, and it keeps conversations really shallow, right? It keeps conversations and concepts and interactions to a just, you're basically starting over from ground zero over and over and over and over again. What? Yeah, I like your shoes. No, I can't hear. I like your shoes. Your shoes. Yeah, they're cool. Cool, thanks. Yeah. Bow down, down, down. We're here in the South, so it's like down, down, bow, bow. What? No, yeah, our drinks are purple. Yeah, that's crazy. Purple's a color, and our drinks are that. How wild and amazing. Yeah, it's very surprising for some reason that they made drinks that are a color. Yeah, no, I'm very impressed. This is a meaningful conversation. I'm getting a lot out of it. What? No, I can't hear. Yeah. No, we are getting drunk and nothing makes sense anymore, and everybody's just saying dumb shit. Yeah, this is great. I also, yeah, this is fun. Like, to me, that's not fun, but a lot of people love it, and they're not wrong. It's, it's, you let the stress and the cares of the universe lift from your shoulders, and you just don't have to worry about anything. But that's not fun to me. I actually get stressed out of that. Like, I'm like, why are we here? What are we doing? What are we doing with this? So, it's just like, the same way people, because of their personality types, because of their information processing types in their mind, like the way people process information, settle information, they're going to be drawn to different forms of media and different entertainment types. It's pretty simple. This is kind of where we get into a little bit of what our guest on, it'll be Sunday when we record and probably Monday when we publish. But our next guest, who we'll be talking to in a few days here, he is looking into uses and gratification as it relates to MMORPGs. But it works for streaming as well. People use entertainment and online communication pathways to gratify certain needs. So, the reason you like something is because it is gratifying something, a need or a want. It's not always a need. It can be a want. You want to feel a certain way. A lot of what makes live streaming work and why people are dedicated to it is because it fulfills a social need. We kind of talked about this in my last one, where you can be who you want, you can feel appreciated and known in a way that you desire because it is online. I mean, even Ply, right? Like, I always talk about, hey, I want to talk to John, not Ply. Like, there's times where if I need Ply to understand I need a real conversation, I'm like, yo, I need John. I need John right now. I'm not trying to talk to Ply. Because Ply is like a personality he plays online a little bit. It's exaggerated. It's still him. It's not like it's completely 100%. None of his personality comes through. It's absolutely him, but it's just like a very drastically exaggerated version of him, right? So he gets to play a role online, and that gratifies a need, right? Having people interact with it, think it's funny, like it. It gratifies him, but it also gratifies the user. The user, the community member, the audience, gets the gratification of hearing their comment read on air. It feels good, doesn't it? I mean, even someone is, Ply is not a huge streamer. He's successful, but he's not, we're not talking 30K plus yet. Don't worry, Ply. Yet. I know. But it's still gratifying to hear him read your comment and give you the attention, right? And it's gratifying when community members read your comment that you type in and they respond to it and interact with it. It gives you that sense of community, that sense of being seen, heard, understood. It gives a social connection that a lot of people seek. So it gratifies that need, that desire. I would even go as far to say I think the way people interact with the streams can vary depending on their needs. Because some people will watch the stream for, again, let's just take Ply. I'm using Ply because it's usually for now, with the size of our audience, it is a shared space that we all can relate to. But some people will jump in, say hi to Ply, throw some blurbs down, maybe throw a sub or two, have the noise and the chaos hit. They get that energy boost. They get that endorphin rush. Woo! Yeah! And then they leave and they go do something else. And they were there for 15 minutes. Other people watch Ply's stream from beginning to end. Sometimes they like the more long engaged community side of it, or they step away and they like to come back and some of them are doing it because they're supporting Ply. Some do it because they come in, get the energy shock to the system, and then they go and kind of like leave Ply on in the background, but then they go wash some dishes, and they come back and engage again for a little bit, and then they get the shock to the system, and then they go and engage for, it's like people use the medium differently, and it's actually why it's really hard to be a good streamer, because it's impossible. Oh, excuse me, I got the hiccups. Good time for that. Good time in the middle of the podcast. But because everybody needs something different from a stream, what they're looking for our podcast, this is where I'm struggling a bit to figure out our podcast, is because I have gotten wildly different feedback. Some people loved it. Some people did not love it. Most people, I think, at least liked it. I would say most people at least enjoyed it. I hope that people stick around and give us time to grow and get better. We are going to get better. Both just like production value and being comfortable speaking on camera and getting fluid with that, and my pronunciation is trash. I mumble, I lisp, but the point being is people will engage in almost any type of entertainment according to what they want at that moment to fulfill. And it's you're not going to please everybody. So I think I want to bring it back to our podcast. Kind of part of what we are doing with Ply, and Ply's toning down the Ply a little bit, right? He's letting a little more of John out. I am having to turn up the Preacher Orin at times and try to match his energy, but also at the same time try to pull. So we're trying to kind of like bring. Whoops, let me get my hands in the right place for people watching. Bring the two communities and the two like elements together. Because I know I have a friend of mine. It's funny. It's where we got. If you hear us joke about Ply being eternally drunk, it's because a friend of mine gave honest feedback. And he described Ply as being eternally drunk. And I think he wanted, like, the type of content he likes is very intellectual, informative, subject matter expertise, lots of research, the latest studies. Aren't we all brilliant people? We're brilliant people listening to brilliant people be brilliant. Whereas, the Ply crew is kind of a little bit on the opposite side, right? Like if we're pulling people from the Ply audience, we're getting, pee pee poo poo, blurp blurp blurp, pee pee poo poo, Tangia, pee pee poo poo, titty 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 penis, right? So trying to mesh those two, like, and find some form of content that can make both sides feel happy and satisfied and content and gratified to some degree, is the challenge. And I think it's a hard challenge. It's a difficult challenge. I think we actually will have to, the fact that we're not going all the way one direction or another, the fact that we're not, all party boy all the time, or we're not just doing purely intellectual. Here's our other doctoral student being the doctoral blah blah. We're trying to like bounce back and forth, and we're trying to mesh it. And I hope that we accomplish it. I do think it's possible. I just think it's going to be difficult. It's going to take work. It's going to take a lot of growth over the time period that we're going to be doing this podcast for us to get to the place where it scratches the itch for as many people as possible. But I guess that gets me into that. I was hoping this would lead me into Raptor's question about how gaming impacts our brains, right? I think gaming is very similar to alcohol or tobacco or sugar or anything that can be experienced with moderation and kind of give you a little break from reality and be good, right? It relaxes you, whatever. I actually don't like the feeling of being drunk or high. I've tried both a lot, more than enough to have a huge sample size, and I know that it ain't for me. Don't like the feeling. I like being clear-headed. But I know a lot of people use it because they're very stressed, high-strung people, and it helps them relax, and then they can actually enjoy. So this isn't me saying that it is inherently wrong or anything along those lines. I don't believe that. I'm just saying, me personally, I don't particularly love the experience. But I say that only to say that I don't struggle with, fighting off those elements. But I did for a long time. I could struggle to not play video games too much, to the point where like I would really have to like crack down to get, like, it's crazy that I got my doctorate because there were times where I would get into gaming binges, and I could just the sense of accomplishment and the sense of just being lost in that world was very enticing. And it can get in the way of other things. And not only that, but it can actually have an impact on your brain. This is where I was going to go with this. Gaming does give the same endorphin rush and the same adrenaline rush that you get from accomplishing goals. It's a goal. That's basically what video games are, right? You're solving a puzzle. You're experiencing. You're walking from point A to point B. It gives the positive brain chemical reinforcement that real life accomplishments can give, but it gives it at a much quicker and easier rate. It's vastly easier to do something in a video game than it is in real life. It just is. Like, no matter how good you are at a video game, doesn't matter. It's easier than being that good in real life. So the problem is our brains will adapt. And they will start to expect. Let me get a drink of water, because that, whatever that word I just said was, it wasn't expect. Okay, we have fluid in our mouth again. Maybe I can talk. Our brain begins to expect that constant stimulation. And it makes it harder for people to focus and accomplish real, actual, in reality, accomplishments and goals, because real life accomplishments and goals take time. And it takes extended focus. It takes patience. It takes, what's the word that I'm looking for? I don't know, but I'll describe denial of, I guess, satisfaction. You know, self-denial. Sometimes you have to put off. Gosh, there's a word for it. It's such a common phrase, and I'm blowing it. My brain, listen, 4 hours of sleep is not. You don't want to do a podcast on 4 hours of sleep. But anyway, it's where you like put off being satisfied or getting what you want in order to accomplish a goal. That's what I'm trying to describe. For instance, I was about to go, you know what? No, I'm not going to. This is because I'm blaming this on video games. This is video games' fault. I am lighting my cigar right now instead of finishing my thought for video games. Tipper Gore was right. No, but so there are some mental and psychological and just physiological changes that occur when you binge on video games and start using video games not as like a temporary, like, ooh, this is nice, I'll go, you know, throw an hour in and get a little escape and then go back to real world, or, you know, engaging other forms of content, entertainment, whatever. Gaming can, in fact, have a negative impact on your brain chemistry if you binge it and get to the point where you're almost addicted to it. Like, people absolutely get addicted to video games. Like, in a real sense, like, you see this more over in Asian countries for some reason. I'm not sure why, but where they have the gaming cafes and stuff, and then you will read how people gamed so like straight in a row that they actually killed themselves. Like, people gamed themselves to death, literally. They just didn't sleep. They didn't eat enough. They didn't drink enough water. They just kept gaming. Couldn't stop gaming. They quit their jobs without actually having money and just kept going until they died. It's crazy. But that's obviously an extreme example. But there are people who just don't do things that they don't accomplish things they normally would have accomplished because it's just, you know, it's easier to get that sense of accomplishment, even though it's not real. Nothing think about people who are really, really, really good at, I don't know, Call of Duty, the very first Call of Duty Warzone. Game doesn't even exist anymore. Game's changed. Everybody's bailed. If that was the only game there's still people trying to make content in Call of Duty, but the game has lost huge chunks of its, like over half of its user base. It's just hemorrhaging users, and no one cares. And content-wise, no one cares to watch it. And that was only just a few years ago. That wasn't very long ago, right? So people spent all this time getting elite at something that within 5 years is completely useless and nobody cares. Even more so if you're playing single-player games, right? Because then it really is only you and what happens in your mind and your enjoyment of the world. You really like, oh, wow, I got an achievement. And literally, no one cares. I know very few people who go. I mean, there's some, I guess, but it just doesn't mean anything, right? It's not going to get you a job. It's not going to get you laid. It's not going to make your blood pressure go down and help you be healthy. It's not going to make you emotionally satisfied long term. Um, it's a good gaming should be a distraction from reality, but not a replacement for it. Is what I'm trying to say. And the reason I'm taking it a more there are positives, by the way. Gaming can help problem solving. It can help strategical thinking. It can help eye-hand coordination, certain type of eye-hand coordination. There's a lot of people really good at video games, but absolutely horrible at hitting a baseball. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't like just magically make you fit. You can't play video games and then make it to the Major League Baseball, right? Like, you're not. Doesn't quite work that way. But there are some positive benefits to playing games. But I feel like since I know our community fairly well and everybody's gamers, most people understand the positives of gaming pretty well. Like, I guarantee you, while I was ragging on it, people like, well, but, right, in your mind, you're like, but I love it. It does the thing that, yeah, there's good things. I'm not saying we should outlaw gaming or anything. I'm just letting you know, for your own health and safety, there are some negative elements of it. It can backfire. It's not always good for you. I know there are some community elements, but that's not really gaming. Gaming just gives an excuse to develop communities, and then you can, from that, get the sense of community and socializing, etc. So I don't know if that's necessarily a defense of gaming, because thinking from like a research side, I would say that is a element that is not consistent, because I do believe that if you were to take gaming, let's say, snap your fingers, Thanos, boom, video games dead, never, don't exist, can't play them again, gone. People would find something else to fill that space. They would find another similar or I guess a replacement for gaming that would allow them to get the sense of community, have a sense of fun. That, you know, for a long time, that was sport. That's why sports were a huge part of American culture, because we had money and time, and sports were a leisure, and so sports blew up in the U.S. because of that. Even though, like, you know, the biggest sporting event in the world is the World Cup, but the U.S. overall outgains, like, the market for sports in the U.S., how much money people spend watching and buying, blows everybody else out of the water, because we have more time to waste on fun things. And sports used to be before we had electronic devices that could, help us compete and engage other people over the internet and over long distances of geographical space. You would have to get together with your friends and physically get together and compete. That's kind of like board games or cards, right? Cards and dice have been around since the beginning of time. You get together in a tavern and you'd roll some dice and joke and laugh, and, somebody get mad and flip the table over, and you're like, oh my God, he's raging again. It's not that serious, bro. And so, I would argue that I don't know. Games are just one of the many ways in which we use, or it's like an element that we use to fulfill the social need because it's available. But if games were to disappear, we would still be getting the same, salvaging. We would find a way to get that same experience. And I don't know. You could almost argue that games are bad in that sense, because at least if you're doing sports and doing athletics, right, you're physically getting healthier. So not only do you have the competition, the strategy, but you're also keeping your body in shape. Whereas if you're just sitting on your ass like I do and play a game, then you're just withering away. But my point being is that I don't know what my point was, to be honest. I can't. I kind of got sidetracked so far that I don't remember where I was headed with it. Other than we do use gaming for to gratify our needs the same way we use entertainment, and it does have an impact on our brains, both good and bad. There are many positives, but there's negatives too, and I think it's important to use the time wisely. Don't make excuses, and don't let anything that distracts you or takes too much of your real life and doesn't give you something genuinely meaningful in response, in return. It should be handled with care and in moderation. And I guess that's my big shtick on that. Is video games are good. I'm not anti-video games. I think the whole if you play GTA, you're gonna want to murder a prostitute is dumb. Absolutely no evidence for that. Not if you're okay. Not if you are a functioning human being, right? Not if you don't already have underlying psychological issues. Some people who are already struggling to decipher reality and fantasy, sometimes they are usually the ones that'll you hear these stories oh, this person saw something on GTA and decided to try it. Those are extremely rare cases, and it's usually people who already have an underlying psychological problem. Anybody who's moderately rational understands that video games are video games and real life is real life, and you never, you don't treat people the same way in real life that you would in a video game. Because the video game, a lot of time, you're just seeing what you can do, right? You don't even care. You're not. It's not real people. No one's actually getting hurt, so you don't care. In games like Skyrim, I'll steal everything that's not bolted down, But I mean, in real life, I don't go around and just try to take stuff out of people's house. I don't visit my friend's house. That looked pretty good. Let me just shove that right in the pocket. I guess that element is ridiculous. But I also think gamers, when that is the only thing they use as a defense for obsessive gaming, 8-12 hour sessions on a regular, some of these college kids who barely get out of college and they don't know any information, they can't write, they can't spell, they don't know any data. They have less information in their heads right today, college graduates, than high school graduates did when I graduated. And that wasn't that long ago. That was 20 some years ago. So less than 3 decades. So what, I'm 42, so 24 years ago. So in the last 24 years, and this isn't just oh, I'm an old man. I'm dead serious. There's stuff that I'm how do you not know this? That fully functioning graduate students, and students who have graduated college and are now in the public workspace don't know, and they can't process information. It's really wild. I don't blame this on video games, but I'm just saying it's an example of a lot of them will be playing. You hear all these kids who are playing, the Call of Duty comes out and they play for 3 weeks. They play basically 10 to 12 hours a day. And you're who has that kind of time? College students. If you're smart, you can figure out a way around the system. Do the absolute minimum amount of work. Not learn anything, abuse the system, and still get out of there. With a passing grade. So it's I don't think that's healthy for society. I do not think an obsessive engagement with gaming is healthy. So that's I guess what I'm warning against. Is just don't be obsessive with it. Try really hard to pay attention to whether or not you are hindering real life accomplishment and growth for I guess a fake version of it. It's not bad to be able to get that, quick mental release and emotional release that video games can give in short spurts. But I do think once it starts getting to a point where it becomes like the primary release and the primary focus, it can be dangerous. Or maybe not dangerous as much as harmful, which are two different things. I mean, people can function far as they will survive and they will exist without being useful in any way to society. So, you could exist. I just, I don't know. Don't know if that's what we should be striving for as humans, is to exist in a self-centered, self-absorbed manner where it's all about us just getting to feel things that we want to feel. I guess that's enough. We've talked about the topics. I think that's good enough. I started ranting. A lot of that's just my opinion. I mean, some of it's based on science. It's facts, research, and all that. But when I started kind of waxing on about, the impact on society, that's more of just me thinking it out and using you guys as a way to exercise the demons. But yeah, we're going to have Ply's going to be back the next podcast. We got an awesome guest coming in who's going to be very informative. It'll be very enjoyable to watch. Please listen to that. The next podcast will be, I believe we're probably going to release it Monday morning. I love you all. I can't wait to see you in Ply's stream. And that'll do it for me. I'm going to kiss some faces.